As per my last video, when I mentioned Picard Season 3, I wanted to talk about that now and go through it. There's a lot I want to say, so I'm going to go through it episode by episode, giving both my personal thoughts and analysis. As a note, as of recording this, there were only 8 episodes out. This review will contain spoilers. I'd like to start off by saying I never watched the first 2 seasons. I have no desire to watch the first 2 seasons, and the only reason I'm watching the third is because I've heard a few YouTubers I trust completely when it comes to Star Trek say Season 3 was good and you didn't have to watch the first 2 for it to make sense. And if Nerdrotic and Robert Meyer Burnett say it's good, then I believe them. So far, I haven't been disappointed. Because of this, I was slightly optimistic going into it, but it's still Kurtzman Trek, so I didn't have a lot of faith. Of the heart. But I'm happy to say that I've been pleasantly surprised. At least Terry Matalas seems to care enough about the legacy of the show and the characters to not want to fundamentally change them as done previously in modern Trek. Finally, we have someone who doesn't want to just bash the OG fans and actually has some original ideas. Allegedly, of course. There are still issues, but overall, from what I've seen and heard, it's better than the previous 2 seasons. For the first time since my initial excitement over Star Trek 09, I've been excited for new content, and I can't tell you just how good that feels. I can look past the issues because more than anything, I want this resolution for the TNG crew, the crew I grew up watching, the crew that felt the most like family. Starting off the episode, I was surprised to hear a song, especially with it being I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire by the Ink Spots. I felt like I was playing a Fallout game, which I appreciated, even if it did feel weird. Right off the bat, and what will be a persistent issue throughout, is it's just too dang dark. I can't see anything. I don't know why shows and movies today have to be filmed in the dark. Why is that how it's done? I don't know this for a fact, but do we have Game of Thrones to blame for that? I'd like to be able to see what's going on. My other issue is what my complaint was about the reboot movies. I realized Dr. Crusher was in a life or death situation, but her fighting and killing those guys didn't feel very Star Trek-y. I'm not used to my Star Trek being so in-your-face violent. Also, phasers now talk? One good thing though, that I'll praise until I'm blue in the face, is the music in this season. It's so freaking good, and it gets me all nostalgic. It's my favorite part of the whole season so far. The music is everything, like when the Titan is leaving the shipyard, or the music that's played during the credits at the end of every episode. I can't wait to get the record of the soundtrack for this season because of how amazing it is. Music can make or break a show, movie, game, etc., in my opinion. Amazing music can make up a little for something that isn't that great, but if you have boring music over something that's already not very good, it can taint the whole thing. And the music in this season sounds like Star Trek music. That's the way a score to anything Star Trek should be, a la Jerry Goldsmith. Another thing I appreciate are the Easter eggs. Some may say it's fan service, but at this point, we need it. And it's not cheap Easter eggs either just to draw the old fans in. There are a lot of subtle things that only someone who not only knows TNG, but the other older shows as well, would be able to pick up on. Honestly, I'm glad I don't have the background of the previous 2 seasons. I don't need it. I can live in blissful ignorance of Picard being synthetic. They can make all the comments they want to about it, but I'm choosing to ignore it. And because I don't have the background of the previous 2 seasons, I have no connection or attachment to Laris, or Raffi for that matter, but I have to say, for as little as I've seen of her, I like Laris, even though I always wanted Picard and Dr. Crusher to end up together, but I'll save that for the next video. As a side note, I just want to say that those have to be Eagle Moss models they're selling at Guinan's bar. They look just like the ones I have sitting on my desk. You know, the fat ones. Another thing I have an issue with about this season, that I'll talk about more later on, is the fact that things seem to only happen between 2 places, Metalis Prime and the Titan. Granted, this season is following a single arc, so I can look past it, but it's not something I'm used to with Trek. It makes the galaxy feel small. And I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of District 6 on Metalis Prime. I think I'd like it better if the whole show wasn't dark and bleak, so you'd be able to go to a place like that as an aside, and not have it be the way everything is. It's a reference to Enterprise, sure, but with it being one of the few places we get to see, it's something that doesn't feel very Star Trek-y. It feels too cyberpunk, or like some dystopian future, but that's modern Trek. Going back to the Titan, Boy, do I love Constitution-class ships. That whole scene where we get to see the Titan for the first time felt very motion picture-esque, especially with the music. Again, the music is so good I could talk about it for hours, but I won't subject you to that in this video. I will say I do appreciate the banter between Picard and Riker. It definitely feels like they're old friends, and now that Riker's captain, they're more on the same level. I didn't like Shaw at first, but he's grown on me with the subsequent episodes. More on that, I like how this feels like a starship now with a chain of command. When I watched the first episode of Star Trek Discovery, one of the things I really didn't like was the fact that Michael Burnham was able to get away with so much, that she could be so insubordinate, and it was totally fine. I don't know how she was able to reach the rank of commander with that attitude, but if I were the captain of that ship, she would have been confined to quarters from the jump, and as soon as we reached the nearest starbase, I would have requested a new second in command. But from what I gather, that's just how modern Trek is. There is no chain of command. Everyone's extraordinarily friendly with each other to the point where it's almost like they're just on a leisure cruise and not a Federation starship. Oftentimes, it doesn't make sense how any of these people could have made it through Starfleet Academy to begin with. So seeing the crew on the Titan and Captain Shaw commanding was like a breath of fresh air to finally see a starship again that felt like a starship. Now, this might be a nitpick, but I'd like to say something about District 7, which I don't know if we ever saw in any of the other seasons, so I don't know if this is normal or not, but why would anyone need to drive anywhere? The cars are very current day looking, and the roads seem so out of place. They might have tall buildings and holographic advertisements, but it almost looks like a modern city today, which again, doesn't feel very Star Trek-y, especially if it houses a Starfleet recruitment center. Going back to the legacy thing, Riker and Picard poke fun at each other's ages, but they don't seem to be mocking the past, which I appreciate. That also seems to be a common thing, especially with either reboots or reimaginings, or whatever you want to call them, or even sequels made today about something from years ago. They often mock the past, and that, as a fan, I don't appreciate, but I'm not getting those vibes here. Overall, I felt like the episode was a solid season opener. There was enough to get me hooked, and while I might have seen the whole Jack thing coming a mile away, I liked it, and I'll talk more about that particular thing in the next video. I'd give this episode a 7 out of 10. 7 out of 9? Even if just because it made me excited for new Trek for the first time in forever. I loved seeing all the familiar faces again, and that will get even better with each episode, even if they have gotten older. They'll always hold a special place in my heart, so I'm glad we're getting this last hurrah, even if it isn't perfect. As a fan, finally getting something so close to what I've always wanted, I feel obligated to share my appreciation. It's the least I can do. So until next time, this is Shlyn, signing out.